This video deals with suicidal ideation, childhood trauma, depression, anxiety, those sort of things. So if those things are especially distressing to you, you should probably not watch the video. However, if that's all fine and dandy with you, this is my video on how being labeled a gifted child sent me down a road to one of the darkest parts of my life. And I'm also accompanied by this very, very good rat whose name is Loki, and she's very sweet, and I love her, and I think she's peed on me. I'm gonna go put her back in so that I can actually talk without being peed on. So, yeah, basically it's me and I talk about stuff. So my equipment and lighting are rather rudimentary. I'm lit by one bulb, and I'm blocking off the window in there so that it doesn't get too bright. And as you can see, the focusing on the camera is excellent. And this chair keeps falling down. So if you see a cut where I'm suddenly shorter, or a different color, or it looks like 6 days later, yeah, that's because I don't exactly have studio quality lighting or equipment at the moment. So I wanted to talk about this sort of story of my life because I feel like it's an unfortunately common occurrence for people around my age. I don't know, unfortunately, too much about the system for gifted children prior to when I entered it, but there were a lot of people around my age and just under my age that were pushed into a lot of gifted schools and labeled as gifted and whatever. And it did seem to be an overly blanket term in its use. And while there were some positives, gifted children do need access to different resources than other children. Not all gifted children are the same, obviously. And to assume that the allocation of those services would solve all their issues is at best naive and at worst a little bit neglectful. So I think it makes some sense for me to talk about this because I think that other people have had similar experiences, not to repeat myself too many times. And although we've had many similar experiences, I don't think that many people talk about it because I think partially because it's so normal, and partially because being labeled a gifted child was sort of a, I don't know, privilege in a way. It was supposed to be an honor. It was supposed to be, oh, look how smart this kid is. And I think for a lot of us, it didn't end up being so much an honor as a gateway to a lot of mental illness, which is not ideal. No, not at all. So to start off, I was born in 1993, which makes me, according to the Discord server I frequent, incredibly old. So being born in 1993 is quite interesting because you sort of live through the move from early widespread personal computers and Windows 95 to smartphones. And one of the other things that happened around that time was the whole gifted children thing. And as well, this sort of first wave of anti-ADHD medication scare thing where people said, "Oh, we're just drugging kids to behave," and I mean, we'll circle on back to that. But when you get older, you find it wasn't exactly drugging kids to behave; it was giving kids the medication they needed to not be slaves to their impulses. So, whole other discussion. So when I was young, my parents found out that I was quite precocious, and my mom tried to get rid of me as soon as possible into preschool. I went starting preschool when I was 3, and by the time I reached kindergarten, I was reading books above my age and all that sort of thing. And I struggled a lot with self-hatred even at the age of 5. And mostly around not applying myself, not doing enough. And my parents took me to a variety of psychologists because I'd also drawn something around when I was 5 saying someone should kill me, which is like probably a bad sign for a 5-year old. So it took me to some psychologists. They determined that I was above average intelligence, and this is not a brag. I'm definitely not that smart anymore, but I can't find the exact paper, but it was 147 on some IQ scale. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's the one with 2 names. As you can see, highly intelligent person. Um, and so they determined that I was gifted. Now, the solution to all my problems, all my self-loathing, all my lack of grades, because obviously, my grades weren't high enough, all my exclusion from my peer group, gifted school. Gifted school fix everything. And to be fair, going to that gifted school basically from the ages of 8 until, when I graduated, so 17, 18, was good. Mostly because I was around more people that were like me. And so I was able not to readily make friends. I never really readily made friends, but I was less excluded. And the teachers were more willing to deal with the sort of problems I had. So as I get older and older in school and it becomes more and more seriously graded. So when I was younger, they had in the lower grades, they had something like ABC or something where it was like acceptable, above average, and like commendable or something. I don't know. And I was supposed to be getting commendables because, this paper says you're this smart. Why does this paper not also say you are smart? These two things, they should be connected. And then as I get older, I get, these are 60s and 70s. You should be getting 80s and 90s. This paper says you're smart, so this paper must also confirm that you are smart. Because, we know. You have to be work harder. Apply yourself. Stop being so lazy. And when I was younger, my response to that was, it doesn't matter. This is grade 5. And to be fair, do many of my employers go back to my grade 5 records? And the answer is no. No, they do not. Not even one bit. But as I got older, and I started to care a little bit more about grades because I wanted to get into a prestigious Canadian university. I wanted to get into Waterloo because Waterloo is pretty cool. It's basically Canada's MIT. Around grade 10, so I think for UK people, it's around, it's sort of the start of sixth form-ish. I started to care about grades because I wanted to get into that school, and they did go back a few years, and I don't know. But there's a lot of mythology when it comes to getting into universities. And so I started to care about grades. And I found that most of the time, if I didn't study, I did okay, if I paid attention in class. And if I didn't do well, it was kind of a roll of the dice. So either I would or I wouldn't, and it didn't matter what I did. Which is obviously not true, but that's what it seemed to be like. And every time I didn't do well, it really did feel like I hadn't studied hard enough, and every time I did do well, it felt like a fluke. So I get up and up the grades, and I'm still struggling with certain things. I managed to get good enough grades to get into university, but not the university I wanted to, which was quite a big disappointment because I'd actually visited that university, and it's quite far from where I was living. Like, I'm talking 3 days of driving far, not, oh, we're going to go out for 2 hours kind of driving. Like, I don't know, like 20 hours of driving is really far. So I didn't get into that university. I got into the university where I was living, and once I got into that university, I didn't even get into the type of engineering I wanted to do because I messed up the first year so bad. And I really, it's weird because everything felt like it was easy, but I still didn't understand it because I wasn't studying. I wasn't studying at all. I throughout most of my university career, I did not study. And when I was younger, it was because I didn't think I needed to, because I thought pay attention in class to be fine. If fine is just surviving, then that is true. I think my average in my second semester was a GPA of 2.2, which is like just above a 50, so you can stay, but you're not going to get into mechanical engineering, Ryan. You can go into software, though, because no one wants to go into software engineering. So, in short, luckily, throughout my first degree, I managed, nearing the end of the degree, to start getting my grades up. Partially that's because I got a little bit of study skills, not that much. And partially because the classes became more group oriented, and in a group people can sort of make up for my weaknesses in not being able to do stuff sometimes. And also I had some good team members, and partially because the classes became a lot more qualitative. I'm not actually that great with math, and it is a lot easier for me to tell you how it works, but not necessarily the numbers in which it works in. So when I was in my last year, I had a class on computer architecture. Awesome. I loved it. I got like an A. It was great. And I had one class in my second last year that was embedded systems programming, where the final was just like write something to do something. A+ in that class. But then it's stuff like I had to take engineering statics twice because I just didn't understand how everything was adding up. Statics is, when you're an engineer, statics is quite simple because it's literally just draw a free body diagram, draw all the forces, and sum it to 0. That's it. Done. Diggity dong, done. But it just didn't make sense in my head, and I would make math errors all the time. And like the difference between sine and cosine always messes me up, which sounds really dumb, but it does. And like what angle I just, spatial processing, it's a thing. So yeah, I get through my software engineering degree, I graduate. Great. So me at 22, after doing an internship year as well, so I'd saved up about 20,000 Canadian dollars. I decide, you know what? University's too easy. I found it too easy, even though I did not. I didn't apply myself, so then everything I did well was a fluke and everything I did badly was my fault, so it was too easy. I decided I'm going to move to Spain. Right? Spain was where my, thankfully now ex-girlfriend at the time, was living. So I wanted to move there, partially to be closer to her, and partially to take a mechanical engineering degree finally, and challenge myself. Because university in Canada was too easy. Too easy. And wanted to do it in another language, learn another language, have all that challenge, finally get a mechanical engineering degree. So yeah, get to Spain, spend a whole bunch of money living in hotels because my apartment wasn't ready for a while. Spend a whole bunch of money on my girlfriend because that's what I need to do to have human contact. Get an apartment in the middle of nowhere because it's cheaper and closer to the university. And I became basically a complete shut-in. I didn't go out because there was no point, because parking in the city is a pain in the butt. And you had to drive to get to the city. There's nothing around, literally. If you look up Marcosende, which is where I lived, there is not even a supermarket in Marcosende. There isn't a place to buy food in Marcosende. You have to go to Thamans to buy food, and it's a tiny corner shop. So there's no point going out most of the time because you just can't go anywhere. So I don't leave the house. And in the classes, not only can I not, like, my Spanish is not as good as I thought it was, I could not understand the math teacher. I didn't get on at all with the 18-year-olds. Like, we had nothing in common. Like, I'm, 23. I have a degree. I've worked in industry. I've moved from another country. My main interest after class is finished is not to go get pissed. My interest is like talking about stuff, having a cup of tea, have a few tapas, but that sort of thing. I also joined Form the Student team, which I thought I was going to be great at. I knew things about cars, I knew things about programming. Oh yeah, I'm going to be so good. I was not. I struggled a lot with it. I didn't know embedded programming very well. I had to learn a lot of things. And as time went on, I found it harder and harder to even get out of the house, to get out of bed. I struggled to study because it was hard. Some of the classes didn't even have notes online, so if I was too sort of exhausted to go to school, well, you're gonna die. That's it, you're gonna die. And so I'm going through this experience in Spain because I'm finally challenging myself. I'm gonna apply myself. I'm on my own. I'm gonna beat this. I get decimated. Absolutely decimated. The Form the Student thing I work in and the stuff I produce isn't very good, and everyone's upset with me for it not working, and I go to the competitions and have a really, really bad time. I drove across Spain all the way up to Europe into Germany, which was amazing, but no one wanted to come with me. So I did it on my own. I fail 7 out of 10 of my first year classes. I managed to pass 2 more later in the year, but still, that's pretty bad. It is normal in Spain to fail quite a few of your first year classes, but not 7. And so there I am, as failure all around me. And eventually I just decide, what, I can't do any more of the classes. I can't do any more of the language classes I was doing, because I also did German for almost 2 years and I still can't speak German. So I quit all of it. I thought, I'm gonna focus on, I have a little job here and I'll try and make other things work. And yeah, I started to just not leave the house at all. Like, not wake up, wouldn't open the blinds, eat, and go back to sleep. Pretty much was the whole day. And that was the darkest point of my life. And the reason I got there is because, at least, obviously you're still processing stuff like that for your whole life. But it was, you are this gifted. You are supposedly this intelligent. And that means the only thing stopping you from doing anything is you. I should probably point the camera and do that. You. So if you fail, it's because you didn't try hard enough. You have no barriers. You are clearly smart enough to do this, so do it. And what I'm finding out now is that's not exactly true. 1, not everyone's brain works the same way, so stuff that's easy for me isn't easy for everyone else. 2, I have been working with undiagnosed ADHD for a long time, and I'm still waiting to get diagnosed, but if I look at the symptoms, they line up with what I've been working with pretty clearly. And what that means is that if something is mentally difficult for me, it's very hard to force myself to work on it. Some days when I have the energy and the mood, go for it. But I also was dealing with undiagnosed depression and anxiety, which brings the mood down, which makes it harder to push myself to do things, which means I do nothing. And that loop of failure making me feel bad, not having enough mood to do things, continued, and drove me to the point where I could barely get out of the house to take the garbage out or buy water because the water was so bad they were giving me stomach aches. Like I had to buy bottled water. It was bad. I had piles of trash bags. Some days I'd open the window. I was on the second floor, as they say in Europe, and the third floor, as they say in North America. And also, when I looked out the window, it didn't actually look down on the ground floor. It was actually the basement level, because it had like the ground floor, and then it had a garage underneath, so that the land was lower. So I was basically looking down 4 stories. And I would stare and I would really think. Would I have done it? Probably not. I don't think. It's hard to know sometimes. But I did look and I did think about it. Because it was existence. It was not living. That was the point at which I started to think I was depressed. Because I was literally down, upset, and sad all the time, consistently. I didn't realize you could be depressed and not be sad all the time. Not the same kind of sad. You are kind of sad all the time, but not the big sad. That was the big sad all the time. That was not good. And I was so angry with myself for not being able to do the thing. Because I should be able to. And I had very little help from my ex at the time. I mean, I asked her to even stop coming to my apartment because, one, she hated it because it was in the middle of nowhere, because I'm not particularly important. 2, she is absolutely obsessed with cleanliness. So the fact that I didn't have the mental energy to clean, because cleaning is quite taxing for me, to her standard, not even like it's tidy, like had to be to her standard, meant I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with the energy required to get the house in the correct state. And she lives 6 hours away, so I drove to her quite a few times because it was my only form of human interaction. And I was too anxious and self-doubty to try and make friends outside of that. I kind of made one friend whose name is Aitor. And so if he ever watches this, thanks Aitor. You're pretty cool. But yeah, it was... Socializing in a second language is very hard. And a lot of Spanish people don't speak English, and also I felt pretty weird being in their country and being like, hi, would you like to be my friend? I will only speak in English to you, which is a bit rude. But socializing in a second language is hard. Very hard, especially when you're like me and most of your socialization is based off of jokes. Trying to get in a quick zinger in a second language is very, very hard because your brain's like, you come up with the joke in English and then you're like translating. Then you go and you're like, hey, hombres. And then you start saying the joke and you miss one word. And you say kind of half the joke and then you're like, wait, just give me a sec. Just give me a sec. Oh, what's the conjugation of that in the past tense? For the third person? Yeah, it does ruin its delivery somewhat. But anyways, everything is going pretty bad. Yeah, that's basically the story. I mean, how I got out of it was I went to visit my cousin, actually, in Aberystwyth, and I realized how much happier I was there outside of the situation I was in. And on one of the trips I did with my parents to Goodwood, because I was very fortuitous in that way, my parents also ended up supporting me because I ran out of money in like 6 months and was too depressed to work. Yeah, I met one of the professors for the Cranfield Motorsports Master. It was like, Cranfield was a dream school for me. I was like, oh man, they work with F1, it's wild, crazy. And he said I should apply, and I thought, they're gonna say no, but like, screw it, I'll apply. So I wanted to move to the UK, and then I got accepted into the Masters, which is like, well, I guess now I've got no choice. I just gotta move to the UK. And I did. And I did motorsports mechatronics, and I almost died from stress, but I did pass it. And now I'm doing a PhD at Cranfield, which is also extremely stressful because I have undiagnosed ADHD and have to do a lot of research, which takes mental energy, which I'm not good at doing. But yeah, so it's kind of a long video, but that's basically how I got to the darkest point of my life, because I was gifted. Should be able to do it. There is no excuse. Try harder, apply yourself. And I got to the point where I couldn't apply myself. I couldn't try harder. And I was in a pit. And it felt like my fault, which made the pit deeper. And it just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and I had no help. And yeah, so I feel like that does happen to a lot of gifted kids, because you come out of the school system, everybody's like, you're gifted, you must have got good grades, so you must be really smart, so you can do anything. And then you have, an issue where you can't do something. And sometimes, well, not even sometimes, for everyone, there are things that you simply can't do. There are things that don't work with your brain. There are things that physically you're not able to do. Everyone has limitations. And kind of the very dark side of the whole gifted thing is the expectation that you don't have limitations. You have talents. You should be able to overcome anything, which I think is a bit unhealthy and a lot of pressure. So yeah, I guess that's my story of how I went to Spain and dangerously looked out a window. You gotta joke about it. I mean, you gotta joke about it. I feel like I'm Jerry Seinfeld. What's the deal with airline food? Yeah, but you gotta joke about it, otherwise it gets too serious. And then you're like, oh no, that was really bad. But yeah, so I got rats now. I have an amazing girlfriend, and I'm in a much better place. But I still struggle with the same things. I still struggle with the fact that I don't have help for the ADHD, really. I'm on sertraline, so it's a little bit better for the depression and anxiety, but it still is a struggle. So even though I am still a gifted person, I suppose, it doesn't fix everything. And it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to have issues. And just because you're what you measure in achievement doesn't match up to what people say is your level of ability, that doesn't make you a bad person. Or at least that's what I keep trying to tell myself, but many days it does not work. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. That says 14 minutes, and this is not the first clip I've done, so I should probably finish up. All right, take care, guys. Bye.